everyone, my name is Sarah, and today we're going to talk about the history of soap operas. So how many of you guys like K-dramas? Alright, well, how many of you guys like American TV shows? Well, a popular type of TV show that is enjoyed in many countries is called the soap opera. So in Latin America, they have these things called telenovelas, which it's basically the same thing as a soap opera. In the US, we also have soap operas. So they're like these TV shows that go on for a really long time. And usually it's older people that like them, in my personal experience. But I don't know. Maybe there's some cool ones that young people like also. But yeah, it's a kind of interesting form of television. So I'm excited to tell you guys about the history of it right now. All right, are you ready? All right, let's start. A soap opera can be a radio or TV serial, which is a story that appears in short, regular installments. The term soap opera comes from radio dramas initially being sponsored by soap companies. So when something is a radio or a TV serial, it's not something that comes out just one time and then it's over. It comes in a series, or it comes out multiple times over regular intervals. So usually one episode a week, and then one season a year is typically how it works, at least in the United States. And so each of these episodes, we can also call them installments. So yeah, it's just like one little part in a series could be an installment. So why are they called soap operas? This is 비누 opera. What does that even mean? Why is it called that? Well, I learned from this article that the term soap opera actually comes from the fact that radio dramas were initially or originally sponsored by soap companies. So in the US and in most countries in the world, I believe, when you're watching TV, usually about every 15 minutes or so, there'll be a commercial that comes out. And so when these commercials come out, the companies for which the commercials are advertising, they usually have to pay money in order to have these commercials, right? So the people who make the television show or the broadcast executives, they take this money and then they invest it back into creating content such as radio dramas or television dramas. And so that's why they're called soap operas, because when you'd be watching them, you would constantly get bombarded or attacked with advertisements for soap companies. So, maybe these dramas, they help people keep clean. Perhaps this is a good thing. I thought that it was a little interesting tidbit of linguistic history. Many soap operas are about domestic situations. A typical soap opera may include ensemble casts and melodramatic, sentimental elements. Some famous soap operas include Dynasty, Melrose Place, Grey's Anatomy, and Gossip Girl. So soap operas, typically they involve families or people who live in a certain neighborhood or even people who work in the same place. And usually they include ensemble casts. So casts with a lot of characters. Sometimes it can be kind of complicated to follow along with who is who and who likes who and who hates who and who killed who. Sometimes it can be very confusing, even for me, and I'm a native speaker. And typically these TV shows are a little bit melodramatic, and that means they're kind of over the top, a little bit cheesy, a little bit corny, but still fun, even though it's sometimes not super realistic and it's not how people would act in real life. But that's why we watch television, right? I don't want to see real life when I'm relaxing and watching TV. I want to see, some crazy people doing some crazy stuff so I can feel good about myself. Or, maybe that's just me. I don't know about you guys. And so some famous soap operas include Dynasty, Melrose Place, Grey's Anatomy, and Gossip Girl. So these are all TV shows that went on for, oh my god, I can't even tell you how many seasons these shows kept occurring for in the US. And my sister, she's actually totally obsessed with this show, Grey's Anatomy. So it's about a doctor named Dr. Grey, and so he works in a hospital, and I guess he's like a really amazing genius doctor, but he's really mean. So it creates a lot of kind of interesting dynamics between him and his patients and him and his coworkers. And I guess eventually you find out he's actually not so mean after all. He's just, hardened by life or something. I'm not sure. But, apparently it's really fun. And if you want to practice your English, perhaps learn some medical terminology, I highly recommend watching this soap opera called Grey's Anatomy. Many historians consider scriptwriter Irna Phillips' Painted Dreams to be the first ever soap opera. Premiering on WGN, a Chicago radio station, on October 20th, 1930, the program was about a widow named Mother Moynihan and her unmarried daughter. So this guy, his name was Irna Phillips, and he wrote a soap opera, or one of these types of shows, called Painted Dreams. So even when you just see the title, it's like, it sounds a little bit cheesy. It sounds a little bit corny. It sounds like a soap opera title, because it is. So historians, they think that Irna Phillips, he was the first one to ever write and promote a soap opera as we know it today. So the show, it premiered, or it released its first episode on WGN, which is a Chicago radio station, in 1930, 90 years ago. That's crazy. That's like older than anyone that I know in my family. And so the program, it was about a widow named Mother Moynihan and her unmarried daughter. So I suspect, probably it goes into, the sad backstory as to why Mother Moynihan is a widow or a woman whose husband passed away, and all the shenanigans or crazy things that have to happen in order to get her daughter a proper husband, because, that was the only thing that people really cared about back then. But yeah, so it sounds like it could potentially be a pretty interesting program. In 1949, Phillips created the first daytime television soap opera with These Are My Children on NBC. The show was greatly influenced by Phillips' works in the radio, including Painted Dreams. So he created this soap opera for the radio because in 1930, most people did not own a television, and especially not in their house, so they wouldn't be able to watch these shows all the time. But around the 1940s and 1950s, owning a television, it became a little bit more normalized, so people could enjoy this kind of entertainment from their homes. And so he created the first daytime television soap opera. So a show that would come on during work hours. So typically shows like this, they're made for women, typically housewives or perhaps even older women who spend a lot of time at home while their husbands are at work. And so the show was called These Are All My Children on NBC. And that's still a major broadcasting company in the US. It's kind of like NBC or SBS in the US. And so the show, it received a lot of influence from the radio, including his first soap opera, which was called Painted Dreams. Despite lasting for only a month before cancellation, These Are My Children is regarded as being a stepping stone for subsequent soap operas to succeed on primetime's television. So usually soap operas, they go on for a really, really long time. I think the longest one running is actually called All My Children, which is it's very similar to These Are My Children. And it was on television for over 40 years. So the characters and the cast, they kept going for 40 years. That is double my lifetime this show existed. So that's just a lot of episodes. But unfortunately, this first iteration, These Are My Children, it lasted only for 1 month before it was canceled. So I guess it didn't make enough money back then, perhaps because it was still 1949, so not enough people owned televisions at home yet. But despite this fact, it's regarded or considered or thought to be a stepping stone for subsequent soap operas. So in this sentence, it means that These Are My Children is thought of as a stepping stone or a starting point for subsequent soap operas. So subsequent means that the soap operas that came after this one. So These Are My Children was the first primetime television soap opera, but then the ones that came afterwards, it still gained a lot of influence from the show, despite the fact that it only lasted 1 month. And primetime television is TV shows that come out during prime time, or a time when a lot of people are watching television, so usually the most expensive time slot for TV shows. All right, well, I hope that you guys enjoyed this history lesson on the history of soap operas. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, make sure to let us know in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys again next week. All right, bye!